read all the 100 pages. It's very tough read. Yeah, yeah. But yeah, should probably check it out what they say about the post flop. That would be interesting. Read it 5 times. Jesus. So you actually, because like I have to admit, like the math is, I'm still like, yeah, yeah, okay, yeah, exactly. Because like math is, while I'm good at math, I don't really understand everything they say. So it's kind of like, yeah, math is idiotic. That would be my answer too. But yeah, so it's like it just like goes over your head. But again, I don't think poker you need to be like this math genius to be excellent. You also have to understand the population. That's something the math people I think miss completely. They talk about GTO when in situation the other guy is not playing GTO at all. So I think there can be positives to being like very fundamentally good with GTO, but also recognizing the human tendencies we see in the game. And come on, if you're playing $20 tournament, you will see some human tendencies. They are not robots. I know it's 2021 now, and everybody's saying there's so money in poker, but I think we are far from actually people being robots. So don't worry about it. And consider the human factor. I think that's very interesting. But okay, so we haven't actually done one hand here. So maybe we could go ahead, sorry. We got stuck on something. Because Hannes was asking earlier, or was it somebody else, Hannes or Trueteller, you were asking like, what is the EV? You see that, let's say 7-6 suited, the EV will be higher, I guess, opening smaller size, for example. So you can look at the EV of opening hands with PokerSnowy. This is nice feature. You have to put the hand here, and then you have to look at like, what is the EV? You see that like, let's say aces, it would prefer opening the small size, for example. But again, remember that this is versus the other Snowy players who are playing fairly optimal strategy. So this is not your $10 PokerStars tournament or $109 mass field tournament where people will be not playing anything close to PokerSnowy. So that's why I would recommend using 3x, for example, instead of the min raise. But as you can see, like you can look at like a little bit different situation. Like let's say Queen Jack off is 1.37, and how much was 6-7? 119. But that's also like one thing you will notice. Like sometimes the showdown strength is very strong, but the playability is not as good. Like we talked about earlier, ace-8 off versus 6-5 suited, for example. So it's not always about the showdown strength, but how much you can win, kind of like the implied odds, like you were talking about earlier. But yeah, so you could just open here and look at like some spot. How should we play as an Erdogan +1? I personally think, so what is your normal strategy when facing under the gun open from under the gun +1? What is your usual move here? Yeah, very strong range, yep. What 3-bet size do you use? What sort of hands would you call here? Who do you call? Yeah, so you would be more like a polarized range. Let's say this is 200 big blinds deep. So let's, we are focused on 200 big blinds today. I have 3.5x. Yeah, that sounds pretty reasonable. Yeah. Okay. So again, why would I say here I don't like too much calling? Why is that? Like when you think about your hands, why I don't like calling too much in this position? What happens if somebody 3-bets us, let's say the 3.5x and little more because we called, right? What is the problem there? We have to fold and think about your top hands. Let's say, yeah, exactly. And think about your top hands. What is your top hand when you flat? Ace queen suited. Are you happy? Are you happy with ace queen suited? Are you happy with ace king off? Are you happy with tens? Are you happy with anything other than aces? Even aces, what do you do? It's like, I think the question you want to ask before doing something is what happens if somebody will three bet? And while this doesn't look like positions people will three bet super wide, but I feel like especially regs, this could be kind of used as a trap actually. If you have aces, maybe it's a, especially if it's a regi stable, it's probably a decent spot to just call. If somebody three bets, they fall under the gun folds, you just call, kind of trap with aces. But the thing is, I really hate calling here because even let's say poker me what hands it would call. It would call actually aces here. It is wild, but it happens. Like I feel like people are a bit blinded by the call. It always looks weak, especially deep stack, right? It kind of always looks weak, right? It's like the taunt one squeezing in high stakes poker. You can do it once in a while with like ace queen off. Yeah, I guess. And again, actually, what do you do with ace king off? For example, if you three bet, somebody four bets, should we consider folding ace king? For example, 200 big blinds deep, ace king off is a four bet bluff hand. This might surprise you. But again, if we face a five bet, for example, it's just fold. Like we can also four bet fold ace king off. Yeah, exactly. But ace king off, if let's say we get called here, somebody squeezes here. So maybe like ace king off could be here. Like as you can see, it's like used four bet ace king off because we kind of ripping like aces, and we four bet. He goes all in. Now you only call aces. There's like nothing else. You call only aces in this case. But again, ace king off is a great ace king off is a great four bet bluff hand with 200 big blind deep. That might shock you. Again, it's probably better to four bet bluff because like in this case, for example, if you have ace king off, it is tough to play. Do you want to call against three bet squeeze here? Do you want to four bet small? Like just put it. If he jams, it's only aces and kings, right? No, but because like we have the aces and kings blocker, it's kind of nice. Like they are never shoving queens, for example, right? They will probably just call. They might even call ace and kings. But if they jam, it's aces and kings. Even kings should call, basically. If they jam, it's only aces, right? Yeah. So basically, because it's such a nasty spot, also, if you call, you give this guy very good odds to call, right? So you don't really want to, that's something like you realize very quickly with the softwares. We don't like calling out of position. So softwares don't like calling out of position when you have player behind. Keep that in mind. Like, so again, you can look at like most of our range as four bet bluffs basically. You probably shouldn't go this wide, like focus over here. You're like four bet bluffing like sevens. You're bluffing ace three, ace four. This is way too wide. Like in general, you probably should be tighter. But again, this is what Snowy prefers. But again, it makes sense that we just four bet fold, for example, the ace king off here, and don't call because like again, if you call, this guy's probably gonna end up calling. You will have no clue where you are in the pot post flop. To be honest, you have no idea. It's gonna be very nasty spot. I feel much better just four betting. If he calls, approach very very carefully, because ace or king might not be good. Basically, you're just playing like super scared at that point. If they call the four bet like big size, they call. I think that's going to be range with queens plus and ace king suited or something. Ace king off maybe if they're overplaying it pre-flop. They should probably like, I don't know. I think in this spot, maybe the villain is supposed to fold ace king. Yeah. So for example, in this case, if we four bet, the villain should fold ace king. I don't think population does that. If they three bet ace king, they get four bet. I think they will still call. some people might be crazy and jam, but again, we are never calling ace king here. But that's something, yeah. But okay, so let's look at it like three-way, and the big blind calls. Let's take fictional flop, like ace nine deuce, easy flop in a way. So what do you guys think about the c-bet here? Is this something you bet 100%? Or, so what is the biggest worry here? 100%, interesting, okay. Yeah, that's probably not so bad idea. Again, with 20% bet, we need to win like what, 18%? Something like that. 20% bet needs to work very rarely. Although one thing, do we have that big range advantage? I don't think so. Versus the guy in the, what do you think the undergun +1 is calling? But think about your range, it's way wider than the guy. I don't think we have like that big range advantage here. I don't think so. Like, well, what is huge? Oh, I thought, okay, oh, you thought about it's only against big blind. Oh yeah, yeah. So undergun +1 has flatted here. Yeah. But what sort of range do you give this guy to flat undergun +1? So you open, let's say you open Hannes range 14%, top 14. What do you think the guy in the undergun plus seat is calling them? Snowy could have aces here. Snowy was flatting mostly aces. I think he could have aces if they don't want to play face up. Yeah, king queen suited. Okay, and let's say we open 3x, so I guess it's going to be, okay, this is going to be pretty hard to narrow. I think it will be way more towards like all the pockets he will call. There probably won't be like almost any 3-bets really from the big blind. I think it will be very much towards here. Actually, we could also look at this, what big blind should call. So you can see that sevens we would have here 33%. The undergun would have 46.84. Yeah, but in a situation where the villain has this, like, you need to be very careful because undergun +1 calls. His range has like way stronger hands. Like when you look at your range, it is a lot of ace-x, yes. Maybe this is not exactly your range. You have more like these, I guess, like you showed. Yeah, but you mostly we want to bet. Mostly we want to bet super small size when we have the nut advantage and the range advantage. Or if you think they just overfold. But what is he really folding here if you bet 20%? Like what hands is he folding from these if you bet 20%? He's not folding any hand, right? So your c-bet is not really working, right? King queen suited he's calling probably with backdoor. He might fold like without backdoor, he might fold. But so it's not going to work very often, even against the undergun +1. Then you also have the big blind. So it's probably not good idea to bet 20% here. That's why. A lot. Well, he folds tens and jacks, then he calls with ace 10 plus. There's not that much he's folding. And if the turn is jack or 10, he might still be sticky with king queen if he has the backdoor flush. It's not like a lot that much folding. Like there's not that much folding. It's kind of tough to make them fold. But sure you could like as an exploit, I would like to do it in a spot where they have more folds than this, and I would be more scared. I think they have, and also I don't think they're this capped, to be honest. They could definitely have some traps here now and then. I don't think people play. So in really, this could be stronger. Like there could be something like that, depending on player a little bit as well. By the way, but I want to look at the big blind defending range as well. Here, what would you defend here versus under the gun and under the gun +1? What sort of hands would you consider? All that, yeah, that might be too wide. But yeah, at least I think so. Maybe I'm wrong. I mean, all the suited, but you said all the worst. I guess I wouldn't defend like 7-3 suited. I would probably fold. 7-5 suited, I would definitely call. That's my instinct. 7-3 suited, it is close. I think 7-4, 7-4 is call. 10 deuce, yeah, I agree with that. And the offsuit ones, ace-10 off, call, fold. Yeah, okay, let's look at this. So, okay, 7-3 suited is close. Ace-10 off is fold. So again, be really careful when calling. But I think in these situations, you have to take one thing in account. Who's calling? Like who's calling? Under the gun +1 is calling here. So you probably have to be tighter. I think this hand, this would look different if it would look at like, again, like button flatting. Let me copy this quickly. And let's change this scenario into situation where actually it's the button calling. Can we call wider now? You can see that this is the range when button calls and what we could call from the big blind. Any difference? Any difference here? So you can see like we could call a little bit more like king 6. Queen 9 is the same, jack 8, 6-3. Not that big difference. I'm kind of surprised. Like mostly the value of king high flush goes higher. Pretty interesting. I guess maybe because like the button still doesn't have that high. You can see that king jack off, queen jack off value. So versus it depends. So when you're considering like calling from the big blind, think about the range. Who is calling? Is it capped? Very strong, weak? If it's super weak, call wider. So again, if you would see somebody, I think we could call a little bit wider than Snowy says here, as we realize our record more often with our low suited combos. Yeah, and definitely like it depends who you're playing against. If it's the best player at the table and the second best player calls, you should probably still be very solid because you are not going to stack these guys, right? So again, if it's like some poor players, you probably want to play a bit different strategy. Maybe you can go a bit wider because it's going to be fairly easy to play against some casual players because they play kind of pretty well defined ranges, tight ranges under the gun. Although I think fun players, they open very tight under the gun, so that kind of makes our range tighter, but gives us good implied odds with some hands like deuces, maybe 6-5 suited hands, which we can stack them off. I think that makes it like more likely.